Well, I'm going to just jump right into it. So, little over a year ago, the COVID pandemic really started to hit and everything. And then we were sent home for 2 weeks, and we didn't know what was happening either. So, what was going through your mind at the time when they sent us home for 2 weeks and said just keep on the loop in case anything changes to your schedule?
Yeah, it was super weird when the pandemic first hit because I remember sitting in Kef's class, just doing pre-calculus, and Kef and I were talking, and it was just me, Joe, and Jaden talking to him, and he said, he's like, I don't think that, he said, I don't think that we'll be out of school. He said, I think we'll be back on Monday, and sure enough, I mean, I had a friend's birthday party that, very same weekend, and we never came back. We just, we got the email from Mrs. Shaw, I believe it was probably Sunday night, or maybe Saturday night, that we were going to be virtual for the rest of the year, and, that of course meant a very abrupt end to my baseball season and a very abrupt end to my social life. And because my mom is a higher risk, it meant that I'd stay home in quarantine for a very long time until it started to settle down. But, as we know, it kind of didn't exactly settle down because, I mean, here we are, Sam, almost a year later. Actually, this is the weekend. It is a year later.
Yeah.
And things have opened back up. Things are nicer, but, masks still have to be worn. It's just, it's very fortunate that the vaccine is able to be distributed now. But if you had told me earlier in my junior year that we would be where we are today, where we're having this meeting over Zoom, I would have said, you're crazy. Now that this has been going on for over a year, I feel like nothing has surprised anybody in our senior class, really.
Yeah.
I mean, whether it be the fact that we can't attend football games or any other sporting events because of the capacity that our teams are allowed to have in the stands during those games. It's been an unsettling year, but I know that our faculty and administration at Bishop have been doing their best to try and make it as normal as possible.
Yeah.
So to answer your question in full as to what was going through my mind when this first happened, I was like, yes, this is great. No school. And then I realized that we were going to have to do it virtual. And it may have been one of the harder periods of my life, not only for my focus, but just trying to keep a level head about everything. Because I mean, it was really hard not to kind of be like, wow, and this sucks, and kind of start feeling sad or down about it. But I just knew that everybody else was in the same boat with me.
Yeah.
So
yeah. And then we were lucky enough to get back to in person for our senior year, but looking at beginning of September up until now, what do you think has been probably the biggest change besides masks and socially distanced in class? What do you think is the biggest change since we've returned back in person?
That's a good question, and I feel like it's the atmosphere at Bishop. I know that usually, as a small school, we kind of pride ourselves on the environment of Bishop. We have probably maybe a little over 400 students, maybe a little less. I'm not entirely sure what the exact number is. But the environment at Bishop has completely changed, whether it be, the social stuff that we usually have during the year not happening, or, not being able to go to a football game, or not exactly having homecoming. I know that this week was Spirit Week, but it didn't really feel like it.
Yeah.
And stuff this year that was supposed to be significant just hasn't really felt like it. I mean, from a student council perspective, even working the blood drive didn't exactly feel right either, because I was sitting there, checking everybody's temperature and asking them COVID screening questions, and it was like the last thing that I wanted to be doing was just like that. I just wanted everything to go back to normal. But the atmosphere at Bishop definitely changed. It just seemed like everything became like, while we may have become like closer knit as like friends, and I mean like just everybody at Bishop may have become a little bit closer knit. It was hard, and I feel like the reason that that happened was because of everything that was going on with COVID. The only thing that we really had was each other. I know that sounds cliche, but the only thing that we actually had at school was each other, because we couldn't go to any athletic events. We weren't having a regular year. I mean, we haven't even had field day yet.
Yeah.
So to have those classmates was really everything to us this year, and just to be able to see each other this year was really everything, because I know that at the end of the year, last year, I got to see some of my friends, just before the summer, maybe like one time, and that was it. And I mean, now I get to see them every day, which is nice again, and it's really left a lasting impression and a lasting gratitude for me as to, how fortunate we are to, go to school in person and go to school period, and be able to, talk with our friends, walk shoulder to shoulder with our friends, even sometimes if we have to like sit 6 feet apart from them. It's that matters. But this year, the community sense at Bishop was kind of just out of whack, but I don't think that it really bothered anybody too much, because I think that everyone was just pretty happy that we were able to, be with each other. And that's something that Mr. B, our principal, heavily emphasized this year when he was talking to the seniors and talking to the rest of the school was, what a gift it really is to go to school in person, given the circumstances, and how like doing like your COVID screening in the morning and getting your temperature checked and like all that stuff is not exactly fun. At least we were going to school. I have a lot of friends in public school who they didn't get that opportunity this year. They're still not fully back in school. They're going like 2 days a week as of right now. And honestly, it'll be interesting for those watching this to really look back on those times, or this time actually, and think, man, like, what happened?
Yeah.
But the biggest change at Bishop was in the community, and that's something that a lot of us really struggled with this year, because there's no pit crew this year. We couldn't go to like watch Bishop beat Mount Airy like in full and have like a whole like packed pit there for basketball.
Yeah.
But we're making do just like everybody else. So I mean, yeah, like the changes were unsettling and kind of unnerving, to be honest with you, but given the year and given the circumstances, I really wouldn't have it any other way.
Yeah. And senior year is a big year also for college decisions. So how did the college decision and the COVID pandemic really affect you as well with that?
Oh man, dude. It was by far one of the more interesting things that I've ever had to do or just like out of anything that I've had to do within the last year, virtual classes or any precaution that I've had to take, or any quarantine that I've had to sit through. Applying to college was one of the hardest things, because last year, and me as well as, other kids as well, we had college visits lined up. We wanted to go see the places where we were thinking about going. But, a year ago, like this weekend, we didn't have that opportunity. And it was all kind of taken from us as juniors.
Yeah.
That also meant that we didn't get to take the SAT really, or the ACT. At least we didn't get to take it multiple times like we would have wanted to. But applying to college was the hardest part, I think, about this year, because I basically, I went in blind, as to where I wanted to go. And it meant that I had to apply to probably about 10 universities and academies, maybe 12. I'm not sure. But I had to apply to a lot of them this year. And that's because I didn't know where I wanted to go. You know, fortunately enough, I was able to step on NC State's campus and realize that that's where I wanted to be going for the next 4 years of my life. But, you know, like, and I was blessed to, like, just be able to feel that that's where I wanted to be and get in there as well. But a lot of kids, especially in these junior and senior classes this year, have absolutely no idea where they want to go. And it's horrible because that, like, right to, like, go and, like, step on a college campus has been taken away from them. And while the application process remained, like, relatively the same, we were doing virtual tours and stuff, and, you know, like, touring, like, dining halls and dorms, like, through our computer screens. And to be honest with you, just a personal experience thing, I looked at NC State's virtual tour and I was like, this is nothing. And I stepped on the campus and it was entirely different, and I was like, okay, like, what happened? Like, what just happened? And I feel like a lot of our decisions this year, and I wouldn't be surprised to see some people transfer out of the college that they've decided to go to. I know that because, you know, a lot of people haven't had the opportunity to really step on a campus and feel what it's like and feel the community. But it's been a disaster. And I know that the guidance counselors have had a really hard time with it as well, because everything is just kind of up in the air. You know, like, they're juggling, like, junior interviews as well as every possible thing that the seniors have wrong, and this class has a lot going on this year. So, to answer your question in full, the hardest part about the college application process was figuring out where you wanted to go this year, and that's because you didn't have ample time to go and visit that school that you were thinking about maybe, like, 3 or 4 times, and it's made finding roommates for college hard. It's made applying for college hard in terms of, you know, your test scores and trying to determine which one you want to go to. So there's been a lot of those problems, but I think that at Bishop, our students have done a pretty good job of, you know, doing their homework and deciphering that. We've had a lot of usually we'll have in-person meetings where a college counselor or an admissions officer will come down and visit us, you know, give us the whole spiel on that particular college. But we didn't get that this year. Like, sure, we had our virtual meetings and they had their PowerPoints, so it was kind of like normal, but, you know, it wasn't like normal. And I like to think that we have a pretty smart class. I like to think that all of them probably know what they want. So I'm confident that they're going where they should be this next year. But it didn't make it any easier on any of us. And I mean, we've had a lot of work this year to do in our classes as well. So applying to college was, you know, rushed and kind of delayed, because usually we would start applying to college during the summer. We didn't do that, or at least not all of us did that. I can personally speak from experience and say that I did not do that. And it made it really hard this year, because I feel like when we came back from COVID this summer, we kind of just got thrown into a situation where we had a lot of work to do, and we didn't have a lot of time. And we also had college applications due. Also didn't have a lot of time. And, you know, I'm not sure if you can attest to that. I know that you committed for golf, but, man, like, it must have still been hard for you as well to figure out, you know, like, where do I want to be for the next 4 years? And I just keep going back to that every single time that I think about what the weirdest thing in this year was. And arguably, it's between college applications and, you know, the lack of social life at Bishop.
Mm-hmm.
It's been hard.
Yeah. Now, looking at more of on the athletic side, so how did this COVID and reopening for senior, how has that really affected your practices and your games and really how your schedules have looked as well?
Mm-hmm. So when the High School Athletics Association posted out their schedule for when sports were going to be playing, that must have been around the beginning of school. So probably September or August, if I had to guess. And that meant for us that sports were going to have a delayed start because they were going to try and see if maybe the coronavirus would maybe start to die down, maybe less cases, but or possibly the vaccine being mass produced. Now we have that, but before it was we hit this point of uncertainty. And for a lot of us senior athletes, it may have been the most depressing thing that we were hit with over these past 2 years.
Yeah.
And well, I guess really this past year, but these past couple months for certain. I remember sitting there with my teammates just before we had gotten into school because we were practicing over the summer together. Masks worn, socially distanced, 6 feet, but we were still just knocking the ball around with each other, just talking. And the question that the underclassmen kept asking all of us, like seniors, and even the juniors were asking us, they said, they're like, Ben, do you think we're going to have a season? And I didn't know how to answer that.
Yeah.
And it was so tough because I know that they wanted an answer just as much as I did. And, being a captain of 2 teams this year, I want to have the answers for my guys, but I couldn't have it for this. And we talked about what the possibilities were. They gave us a start date for soccer, but the first day that we went into school, I was also talking to some of my teammates for soccer as well, and they said to me, there's no way we're in school for more than a month.
Yeah.
They said, we're done.
Yeah.
But, we've made it all year. Anyway, I'm sidetracking from athletics, but they all kind of tie in. So we didn't think that we would actually have this school year, at least as students. We didn't think that we would be playing sports now. But props to the High School Athletic Association for, making this work this year. But we had to push back all of our schedules. So, for example, basketball is usually a winter sport. It still was in the winter, but it was before every other sport. Soccer is not a winter sport, but soccer was in the winter. We're almost done now, just in March, but starting was really hard. And, we didn't get the practice time that we needed before soccer. It's a conditioning sport, and we didn't have that conditioning starting this year, and I know that a lot of other people felt the same way. But, one thing that was super hard was, we have our rivalries, obviously, in conference, and for those games, when we played Mount Airy last year, it was so nice to have a student section and to have a pit crew and to see Yael Guzman in the stands with Mr. Perdome's horn during the games. Amazing. But we didn't have that this year, and I feel like it took a lot of energy away from all of our teams, not just soccer, but I know that football's struggling with that right now, and basketball definitely did during this year. But it feels like the time that we were supposed to have to have our senior season and the senior night, all of the glory of it, I should say, has just been kind of taken away. It just feels like just another thing this year that we didn't get to have, that we kind of got to have, but wasn't exactly the way that we wanted it. And that's made it really tough for all of us this year because they've also changed how playoffs work for each sport this year to try and accommodate it for COVID. So we've had a couple teams that have gotten snubbed, and soccer too, I guess, could technically get snubbed because we didn't win conference this year, but we're still top 32, which is usually how they order their teams in the brackets. But in short, I guess everything has been changed to a degree in which none of us thought were possible. We never thought that we would get to play this year. I never thought that I would have a senior season, and it was heartbreaking, to say the least.
Yeah. So some students had the unlucky draw this year of having to quarantine because of a possible breakout at school. Did you have to quarantine this year?
Yeah, I did a couple times.
How was that?
That was also really hard. That was another weird thing that I had to deal with this year. Like I said earlier, my mom's high risk, so that means that I have to really limit my exposure to people, which meant, I have a really small circle of people that I'm usually hanging out with, just the same as anybody else. But I did have to quarantine this year twice.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. So the first time was because I went out and I was in a large group of people, and I wasn't wearing a mask, and eventually I came back to school, and somebody had found out about it, and there's a lot of kids at Bishop who didn't feel safe exactly, and that's one of the reasons why some kids didn't come back to school as well, which is fine. But I was being irresponsible, and I hadn't worn a mask because I figured, what's the harm? Just enjoying the outside, but it didn't work out that way, and because it was such a large group of people, I had to be sent home. There really wasn't a choice, and our principal was great with that. Mr. Bashini, he was great. He called us all in because there was a little group of us who were all hanging out in addition to that large group, and we all got sent home for, I believe it was 6 days. That was before the diocese changed the policy that made it you had to stay home for 10 days or get a test on, I believe it's 5 days. Yeah. But yeah, so that was the first time hanging out in a large group. I got sent home, which was fine by me. And then the second time that I got sent home this year was because one of my friends down at the beach tested positive, and it's real like rural down there, so you wouldn't assume that like the guy right next to you has it, but that's actually exactly what happened. And he tested positive, and I had just seen him, and it was right before New Year's too, so I couldn't like hang out with my little group. Yeah. So I was quarantined then too, and it sucked because I was doing everything that I could to protect my mom if I ever had to leave my room. I was wearing a mask, but usually during my day I was just up in my room chilling, and it was weird, a weird feeling, because like you like being in your room, but like nobody likes being in their room that much. No one likes being in one place that much, especially not me. I'm usually on the go, but those are the 2 times.
Yeah. So Bishop, as you said, they've done a pretty good job this year with the community and making sure that we try and make the most out of our senior year and keeping us as healthy as possible. Do you think there's anything different they could have done this year that may have affected the way that your senior year has gone?
No. Like I thought about that a lot this year, and usually I'm a fairly critical person, especially when it comes to stuff like that, and like little stuff that's why I'm on student council, is because I'm critical of that stuff. But no, there really wasn't anything this year that wasn't handled appropriately. Mr. Teray, was incredibly efficient this year,
Mm-hmm.
whether it be with the screening and um, just staying on top of news and what was allowed, what was not allowed.
Mm-hmm.
He's done a really good job this year of making sure that we all stay safe on campus. I know that sometimes it kind of feels like he's nagging, but it's because he has the best interest of all of us, and especially us seniors too. Like, this is our last real year at home.
Mm-hmm.
And he has done a spectacular job
Mm-hmm.
as the dean of students to make sure that we stay in school for this entire year. And it looks like people are starting to get vaccinated. I know I have my vaccination appointment fairly soon,
Mm-hmm.
and it's been while it's been an experience for sure.
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't have it any other way given the circumstances. I think that the faculty and staff have done an incredible job this year, and all of the administrators, and it's truly a blessing to be able to be back on campus, and I'm truly thankful to the almighty powers that we are, having this last year together before we go off to college and, turn the page for the next chapter of our life.
Yeah. So I'm going to ask you the same question, just in a different way. Do you think the NCHSAA could have done anything different to make this senior year a little more enjoyable?
Yes. I think that and I don't know, I'm not entirely sure if it's related, but as far as high school sports go, I would have preferred that we had our normal start time. I know that it was uncertain, and everyone was kind of in a panic,
Mm-hmm.
for lack of a better word, to make sure that protect our student athletes and make sure that we didn't get sick. But I really would have preferred if we could have kept the normal schedule this year,
Mm-hmm.
and just leave that as one bit of normalcy for us. Another thing, allowing more students at the game. I know that it can't be max capacity, but I mean, we've got seniors who they were literally trying to hide behind the rock
Mm-hmm.
to watch the games. They want to be there so badly, but they can't. I've had seniors come up to me this year and just say, hey, is there any way I can go to the game? We had this idea, and the idea was that they would gravel road down
Mm-hmm.
behind the one field goal post. Yeah, they're like, we can bring out lawn chairs and place them 6 feet apart all the way down that gravel road so we can watch the game.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, yeah, that's a great idea. And then I talked to someone else about it, who's in the faculty, and they're like, yeah, it's not possible because we have a maximum capacity at the game. And I was like, excuse me.
Yeah.
But, I certainly would have not known how to handle it either if I were in any of those leadership roles for the High School Athletic Association. I know it's been an even weirder year for them too, trying to make sure that we were even able to play all of this.
Yeah. Yeah.
Hi, I'm Daniel Jones, and today I'm going to be interviewing Lainey Wessels, who is the captain of the women's golf team, on how COVID-19 has affected her sport. So, how has COVID affected your practices?
Well, golf and COVID, since we're outside, doesn't really apply too much to me. But I mean, definitely going to the range and stuff. Country clubs have been really precautious about how close you are to someone on the range. So instead of the full range being open, they'll close half of it or leave spaces in between where normally you would be able to hit, just to keep people social distanced. The flags on the greens will be taken out, so there's no germs on the sticks of the flags. And I went to one golf course where some of the holes have been closed just to keep less people on the green. But
So how has it affected your matches and your schedule?
well, the girls golf team normally plays in the fall. So this year we got moved to spring, and just like every other sport, we're all on top of each other. So it's kind of been a little difficult to manage school and then, other things on top of golf. But golf particularly hasn't really like changed like too much because I mean we still have our team, but practices have been a little different, with the mask and all. But besides that, I feel like practice has remained the same with COVID or not.
Perfect. All right. So, what were the main rule changes that you saw due to COVID, and how did that affect you?
Really with golf, it was just the mask. I mean, we always traveled kind of like by ourselves if we were able to drive, or if it was like a long match, we would ride in the bus, but we kind of sat spread out anyway. So, really, with golf, it hasn't affected too much besides like the facilities and the courses, and like honestly, like getting tee times and reservations have been a little more difficult because like you can't really just walk up and like say you want to play now. You kind of like really have to make a reservation to make sure that like I don't know, you're not like really waiting that long and everyone's wanting to like be outside because of COVID and like get some fresh air. So golf courses have also been like extremely packed. So you have to start planning like really like accordingly.
All right. So, some of our sports teams here at Bishop have been exposed to COVID and have had to be quarantined. Obviously, the women's golf team hasn't had that happen to them yet. But if that were to happen to y'all, do you think, or how do you think the quarantine period would affect your team in returning to play?
Um well, what I would personally do is I mean, if I was exposed to COVID, I would go get a test after 3 to 4 days. And if it came out negative, I would go practice on my own because I would know I'm COVID free. And I'm sure with school guidelines, we would still have to be out for a certain amount of time, so I wouldn't be able to see my team. But I would definitely go practice on my own to be prepared for the team, and I would suggest my teammates to do the same if they have a negative test for COVID.
Do you feel that something could have been done differently to ensure or to further ensure the health of you and your teammates?
No, I think our Coach Santos, is doing a fabulous job of following the COVID guidelines with golf outside. I mean, you're not really on top of anyone like I've mentioned earlier with golf anyways. You're doing your own thing and you're spread out. So I really don't think there's anything that coach could do differently with golf and COVID, but definitely if we're in the weight room for women's golf, we do have our mask on, which is definitely different from previous years, and we kind of have to be distanced as well. But really, coach is doing a great job, and so is the teammates of really following all the precautions to stay safe so we can have a pleasant season.
Do you feel that the NCHSAA could have done something to make your season more enjoyable for student athletes, especially seniors?
Well, that's a great question because there is a lot I could say about them. But I mean, for golf, like I said, I mean, they they're letting us play high school golf. So I mean, that's a benefit, but like if it was about a different sport, like I could say a lot more, but for golf, it what they've done really hasn't affected me except for moving my season back to the spring. I mean, I wish we were able to play in the fall. That way, like it wouldn't be on top of everything else because I feel like with all the sports being pushed in one season, like I mentioned before, it's also really hard on the teachers and like with our schedules as well. Like you're on the guys team, so we will travel together and we're playing the same courses this year. So it kind of makes our schedule easier, but it still is a lot for everybody just to comprehend. But honestly, I don't think they really had too much of effect for golf because we don't have a crowd anyways watching us. So I don't see what they did for high school golf made any difficult challenge for us.
Awesome. So that's all I have for you. Thank you so much for doing this, and thanks for your time.
You're welcome. Thanks, Daniel.
Yep, of course.
No. Okay. First question. How did COVID affect your practices?
So I wouldn't say there's a big change in school practices, just because golf is one of the sports where you can be socially distanced outside. I'd say the only big change that we really made to it was before practices, we have to do kind of like a screening. So we have to fill out like this questionnaire of, do you have a fever or a cough? What's your temperature and whatnot? And then after that, Coach Tuccio, she really recommends that we wear masks while we play, which I mean, that it's kind of, from my perspective, I feel like it's kind of annoying just because I don't feel like we need them in any way. But I mean, other than those two things, we haven't really changed the practices. I mean, we're still practicing, I think, 2 or 3 times a week. But I mean, no, I wouldn't say there are any other changes besides those two there.
How did a COVID affect your games and schedule?
So for golf, I know that our schedule has been pretty condensed this year. I know that we would usually start the first week of March, and I think we'd end with states, which I think might have been the last week of May. So definitely a shorter season on matches, just because I think we would have the same number of matches, conference and non-conference. But this year, I think we have 7 or 8 conference tournaments, and I think we have 3 or 4 non-conference. When it used to probably be like 8 or 9, maybe 10 conferences, and then we would have 6 or 7 non-conference, and it would probably be 1 a week instead of about 1 every other week. But for practice, we haven't really changed the schedule as much either. We're still doing the same practices that we did last year when we didn't have COVID or whatnot. But as of that, I don't think we've had to change the schedule around for tournaments based off of if anybody's in quarantine or if anybody's positive, which is a good thing so far because that's not what we want. But I think we're all just really hoping that everybody stays healthy so we can have a full season this year. So yeah.
Okay. What were your main rule changes you saw due to COVID, and how did they affect you?
On a golfer perspective or just in general?
From a golfer perspective, yeah.
So biggest rule changes. So number one is we had our match today. When we have scorecards, we don't exchange scorecards anymore. So you keep your score and the other player's score on your own scorecard. You don't change out cards. You don't give signatures. You just keep the number, and then that's it. Number two, this is kind of a golf in general, is they really recommend you don't touch the flag stick or take the flag stick out because they're afraid it may pass germs or whatnot. And a lot of golf courses will actually put a little kind of a foam noodle or a PVC pipe in the bottom to block the ball from falling down, which I have no idea how that affects it in any way, but I'm all with the flow. Some courses have taken out rakes for the bunkers just because they don't want that passed around either. And then like water coolers, the ball washers, all that, some of that's just been taken away. But, from a player's perspective, just for school in general, I think it was mostly just masks and trying to be socially distanced. And like other tournament forums, they kind of just say stay socially distanced or whatnot, which is kind of odd because golf is independent and you're not really trying to box somebody out or whatnot. But I mean, I can't really think of anything else from the top of my head just because they haven't really changed as much. If anything, they're starting to bring some of those original pieces back, such as, the water coolers and the rakes and the touching the flag stick and whatnot, as the vaccines are starting to roll out and everybody's going to get healthier. But other than that, there weren't really any big significant changes that affected the game. And I really hope we don't have to go back to those changes anytime soon.
Yeah. Okay. Some of the sports teams here at Bishop did get exposed to COVID and have been quarantined. How did the quarantine affect your team, and how did the 2 weeks affect your return to play? Well, I mean,
So-
golf didn't really get quarantined, so but
Yeah, we starting about 2 weeks ago. We haven't had to go into quarantine yet, which is a good thing. I've been online most of the year. I'm gonna come back Q4 when I'm. Yeah, I'm missing everybody, so I kind of want to get back now. But online is there's some challenges to it and whatnot. Getting to and from school to take tests and practices and whatnot. But that's what's great about the faculty at Bishop is they understand that I want to be at home for safe being, and they understand that I may need to leave early to get to and from places, even if it's a test or a match. So there's not a really big change in the quarantine way either. We haven't had to quarantine, and I'm hoping nobody has to quarantine either because, we have a pretty kind of a limited team this year where I feel like if we have one person in quarantine, that leads to another. We may have to drop some of our matches, which is not what we want. Trying to think of what else. I don't think anybody on our team. I mean, I know you had to quarantine. I don't know what that was like sitting in a room the entire time, but I don't think anyone else on the team has had to quarantine for other purposes. I know Bishop had a few outbreaks that were pretty well controlled from Mr. Teray and Mr. Buscemi, but other than that, just looking on the bright side of where quarantine may soon turn into a thing of the past. But I don't think anything else has really been affected through the quarantine process. No.
Gotcha. Okay. Do you feel that something could have been done differently to further ensure the health of you and your team?
I would probably say no, just because those that are in the athletic side of things that are really turning positive or having to quarantine is really a lot of indoor sports. A lot of basketball and volleyball, and even some of those other sports outside. Those kids have had to quarantine because you're face to face with them. Not too much has had to change with golf, just because I don't think anything needed to be done different. Just because I feel like golf is, like I mentioned before, golf is just one of those things that you're outside, you're not face to face with someone, you're keeping your distance. I wouldn't recommend any other changes either. I mean, I think masks is enough. I don't think condensing schedules or condensing how many you can bring to a match would make anything better. But I think just the masks in general is a little odd, but I don't think any other changes needed to be made. I think in order for us to have the opportunity to have a full season, really helped us a lot. So no, I don't think any other changes or had a strong effect on us or any other changes needed to be made. No.
Gotcha. Okay. And one more question. Do you think that there's anything that the North Carolina High School Sports Association could have done to make your season more enjoyable?
I mean, making the season smaller or shorter, as I should probably say, was probably the biggest blow of it all. I mean, we have a pretty good team this year, and we wanted the opportunity to play as much as possible. I know some of the other schools feeling that way too. But from a golf perspective, no. But from another perspective, as a student, I would probably say yes. I mean, it's hard your senior year when they won't allow fans at basketball games and even the football games, because being in the pit and seeing Jael blow Mr. Perdome's horn, or getting in your Hawaiian shirts, that was really a fun time. And we didn't have that this year, sadly. But that's also why I think we're all looking forward to college, because we'll be able to be a part of a pit again, maybe even a bigger pit and whatnot. I think if the NCHSA could have done anything differently, I think it would have been, we want to be at the games to support, even if it means only allowing, a certain handful amount in, even as a lot, like, the lottery or whatnot. But, from a golf perspective, probably just the schedule change was the biggest one. But then, from a student perspective as well, just probably, wanting to get back into that atmosphere was the probably the biggest change. I think the NCHSA could have probably worked around a little bit. I'm sure some of my friends may agree with me on that too, because we have a lot of fond memories. Other than that, no, I don't think they could have done anything different.
Awesome. Well, then, that's it. So thanks for meeting with me.
Absolutely, buddy.